So welcome, Toni Martin, to this episode where we're going to be talking about AI, automation and the future of work. Toni, apart from having a fantastic surname, I know that we've worked together. You've done some fantastic work for us on our website and creating funnels, and are a bit of a tech guru. But do you want to explain a little bit more about your business and your background, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, firstly. And obviously, yes, kudos to the surname. So I run a tech implementation agency. It's called Ascends, and we support online businesses with, building funnels, everything from emails, integrations. And now, as we are evolving into this space of AI and automation, we're delving into that as well. So I have been working online for the past 8 years. And over time, I've kind of just ebbed and flowed with what the marketplace is doing and what people are needing support with. And so here I am, and we have worked together previously, which has been brilliant. And yeah, so I am a bit of I wouldn't say a guru, but definitely a bit of a geek. Love solving problems, love using, tech to help me do that. So yeah.
Awesome. When we came about this topic, I thought you'd be the ideal person to talk to. And for those that are interested more about you and your business, we'll put the links into the post
Thank you.
episode scripts, etc., so they can connect with you directly. But yeah, this topic, like I say, it seems every time I turn on the media or kind of look at social media channels, that the word AI is ever present these days, and it's such a topical issue for people. But I'm also conscious that talking to some of our clients, some of our friends, etc., that there's still a lack of awareness around what it is, what it can do. There's potentially a lot of fear still for some people, and I think that's really what I wanted to explore. Again, tapping into your experience around how do we get past that fear? How do we get people fully utilizing the capacity that AI has? I remember talking to some of my clients, must have been about 3 years ago, saying AI is going to be a game changer. And it really is. And as you know, I'm a huge fan and integrate ChatGPT is just one of the kind of AI tools out there. But yeah, just kind of interested in your thoughts and kind of ultimately your ideas, tips and hints around how managers, leaders can implement AI for themselves and improve their working lives, really.
Yeah. I think, well, it's a huge topic, isn't it?
Mm.
And it's interesting that you mention fear. There is definitely a lot of fear, and I think that's going to, stay the case. And in all honesty, I also share a lot of the same fears. So, with my business hat on, I look at AI and I'm like, it's amazing. It can do so much for us. It can help us save time. It can help us generate more money. And, these are all the things that as a business owner, we want. But with my I'm a mom, so with my mom hat on and, looking at my 9-year-old son and listening to what his hopes and aspirations are for the future and, the kinds of jobs that I'd love to be this and I'd love to do that. And you're just kind of like, will that even exist in the next 10, 15
Yeah.
years?
Well, that's a
I'm
really
not
good point.
sure.
Yeah. I remember reading, I think it was Tim Ferriss's books. I'm not sure if you've come across those, but Tim
Yeah.
Ferriss wrote the 4 Hour Working Week back in 2007, I think it was, and then followed that with The Tools of Titans, I think 2017. But in both of those, he was talking about hacks and kind of outsourcing and time saving for individuals. But I think AI has brought so much of what he was talking about back then into a reality for people.
Yeah.
So absolutely right in terms of our job still going to be available for people. Are the work that people do, is it actually going to be the same as what it was 10, 15 years ago? Yeah.
And it's not going to be the same. I think we can conclusively say that things are changing and changing rapidly. However, I do think as business owners, particularly small business owners, burying our heads in the sand is not the way to go with this, and we have to be prepared to embrace AI. And from a workforce perspective, I know a lot of your audience are leaders, HR professionals, that kind of thing. We need to be really looking at how we can train people to leverage AI. So it's not that it's all about, let's put in an AI assistant and cancel out 5 jobs, or that kind of thing, which obviously with the work that AI can do, it does have the potential to replace jobs. But I'm more of the school of thought that we should be empowering people to leverage tools that are available to them, so that actually frees up their time to do the things that AI can't do. So human connection, obviously, it can't do that. It doesn't think like a human yet. These are the kinds of things that, where we have people in our workforce who maybe don't have time to develop those relationships because they've got a long list of other things to be doing, we can use AI to facilitate with that, and make their time more free, so they can focus on the other kinds of jobs that maybe they don't get around to doing, but would love to be able to. So yeah.
I think you're right. I think, again, I've been, for a long, long time, ever since we've been in business, I've been a huge advocate of the concept of working smarter, not necessarily harder. And I think, again, AI enables you to do that. And kind of mentioning there about the personal human interactions, I think you're spot on there. Some of the more mundane tasks you can get AI to do, etc. But you're still going to need that human connection until, interestingly, you mentioned there, until AI can do that. And that's a very interesting subject in itself, because it is evolving at a huge pace. I remember when we first started using AI, like I say, ChatGPT. I think it was just ChatGPT. It's now on ChatGPT 4.5, I think, is the latest one that we're using. So there's constant evolving, constant new additions, almost like your Apple phone's being updated every year. There's new progress being made. So again, I get that a lot of people can get confused, can get scared about where this is actually going. But if we were to strip that back, if we were to start thinking about, if I've never used AI before, if I've never thought about its potentials, what would your advice be as a starting point for a manager, leader, business owner?
Yeah. So again, for me, I've got quite strong opinions on this, because ultimately we are living in here in the UK. We do have a digital skills gap. So I do encourage leaders. Yes, we want to be thinking about AI and how fantastic it is, and the things that we can be doing with that, but also just actually making sure that our workforce have the basic skills before we try and layer on the AI. I think is really important. So I'd be remiss not to say that. However, in answer to your question, we can start with just looking at processes in business and thinking about, okay, how do we take, and it only has to be a single process. It doesn't. I think what happens is, like, I ran a challenge recently, and I was asking people, okay, if there was one thing that you could do in your business, what would it be? And it was kind of like the Mount Everest kind of response. Well, I would want to do this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm like, let's just pare it back a little bit. Let's start with one thing that we can make a difference with, and then build from there. So I'd say, look at your processes, look at the mundane tasks, the tasks that are taking way longer than you would want them to, the tasks that no one really enjoys, and so it kind of sits on the to-do list and gathers dust until you absolutely have to get round to doing it. And those are the places where I'd say it's best to start there and see, well, how can we get AI to automate this for us? And from an automation perspective, AI assistants, buzzword, everyone's talking about it. Get an assistant to do this, get an assistant that can do that.
So just to stop you on that, so just for the uninitiated, what is an AI assistant?
Well, so it's literally let's call it a tool. And basically, let's say someone comes along to your website, for instance, and you can't be there 24/7 to answer somebody's questions. And so for a lot of business owners, particularly small businesses, that presents a challenge, because what tends to happen is someone comes along to the website, they can't get the answer that they're looking for quickly. And so then they bounce on to your competitor and probably find the answer over there. And so they end up working there, and you've lost that lead. With an AI assistant, you can train it on your business to understand your system, your processes, and it can be there in its most rudimentary form. It can be there on your website. Someone can interact with that assistant, and off the back of that, you could generate a lead and push that data into your CRM. You can have it schedule appointments, and literally, instead of having a backwards and forwards about, well, when are you free, it can just add that appointment straight to your calendar. And then obviously it can do customer support, issue refunds, answer questions, that kind of thing. So that's what an AI assistant effectively is. It's a little helper that has been created and trained specifically on your business. And so, it's a buzzword, it's everywhere. You go on YouTube, or maybe I'm in an echo chamber actually, so maybe it isn't everywhere, but it feels like it's everywhere. You go on YouTube, there's 1,000,001 people talking about how you can set up these AI assistants, and it all feels very exciting. And potentially it is very exciting. It can be a game changer for businesses. We had a client just emailed us yesterday. She runs a salon. We set up an AI assistant for her, which is linked to her Instagram and her Facebook account. And so the problem that she had, and this is the thing, you have to identify the problem she had was people were messaging, 9, 10 p.m. at night when there's no one there to answer the question. And of course, in her industry, she runs a salon, so they're kind of a dime a dozen. She's losing leads and losing sales. So we set up this assistant for her, and she'd messaged yesterday just saying, it's really fantastic that the AI is having these conversations and helping us make bookings before I'm even aware that the conversation's happened.
Wow.
So it has huge potential.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's interesting that you talk there about how AI can be honed into your own business. And again, I think that ability, and I heard someone mention a while ago about the importance of input engineering, telling the AI specifically what you want it to do to get the best results from it. And again, if you're too vague, if it's too kind of generic, you're not going to utilize it at the full capacity. So that's almost a skill in itself to learn how to kind of tell it exactly what you want it to do. Any tips and advice on that?
Yeah, so input engineering, or prompt engineering, it's sometimes referred to. When you are interacting with ChatGPT and you're trying to, or it could be Claude or any other model, but let's say ChatGPT, because I think that's what most people are probably familiar with. You're having a conversation with it, you ask it to do something, it delivers something to you, it's not quite right, you have to go back, say, can you do this? And there might be 20 of that back and forth kind of exchange before you get it to where you want it to be. If you learn the skill of prompt engineering, you can do that in one go, maybe two at a push. And all it is the input directly affects the output. So the better the input, the better the output. Obviously, the worse the input, the worse the output. So it's really thinking about how to instruct the AI or the large language model to give you the result that you want. And over time, the more you do it, but thinking about it intentionally instead of just whipping open ChatGPT and having a chat with it, if you're being more intentional with it, you can then start to create templates that you can use again and again. So for instance, if you are using ChatGPT weekly to help you write a newsletter, you can really hone in on this is a very clear prompt, this is what I want you to do, and it will deliver the results in a very structured way. And you can guide it, with what the structure should look like. So output it with a title, give it a subheading, then I want 3 bullet points, then so you can be very, very structured with it. And that's all that prompt engineering is. So I do think that people have a tendency to make it sound way more complicated than it actually is. Indeed, people are charging thousands and thousands of pounds for this. But for small businesses, it isn't some massive complicated thing. It's just about being intentional with the instruction that you're giving to the large language model. So whether that's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude, whether it's whoever, Grok, there's so many of them now. But it's being intentional with what you're putting in, so that you can get a better result out without having to sit there for an hour or two having a back and forwards conversation.
Yeah, and that's really important to understand, isn't it? I think, again, to maximise the opportunity that you're actually using there. But it's interesting you mentioned about small businesses there, because, again, from our experience, it's not just the SMEs that are getting to grips with AI. Certainly some of the larger organisations that I know that we work with have integrated their own systems or are using things like Copilot. And again, for some employees, it's kind of recognizing that the kind of capacities that even Copilot can do. I was speaking to some delegates at a recent course that we ran for a blue chip organization where they were using Copilot to draft the emails, to use it also to record the minutes of meetings that they were having. So there was no need for a minute taker anymore, and it was sending out actions, etc. And again, it's just kind of recognizing that it has all these capabilities. Now, unfortunately, they weren't made aware when Copilot was introduced to them of all the things it could do. So again, they've got this, almost like the analogy that I use, they've almost got this Ferrari, but it's sat in the garage. They're not really utilizing it. So again, have you kind of seen that people have the tool, but they don't fully utilize it?
Yeah, I think we see that even with like ChatGPT in its basic form. Absolutely, I think we've got maybe not necessarily the problem, but there are so many tools, so many different options. It fast becomes very overwhelming to know which ones to use. And then when you do choose a tool, it's exploring all of the capabilities that come along with it. And often we only scratch the surface, and that is universal across the board. I see that all the time. And sometimes, because AI is generative, it's a case of we probably don't know like what it can actually do until we start exploring. So even with the developers of these platforms, I am sure that they aren't across every single use case. But when someone comes along and says, "Oh, I wonder if it could actually do X, Y, and Z," I don't know, let's try it. And it can, that's when you kind of realize, well, actually it can do so much more than we anticipated, or than maybe than what we planned for. So I think we're on a path of exploration. I think all of us are. And we will continue seeing that there are tools that can be utilized that most people probably aren't utilizing to their full effect. And even when you think you are using it to its full effect, you'll probably discover one day that actually it can do something else that I didn't even think of or realize it could do. So yeah, I think that's a trend that will continue.
Calling all HR professionals, leaders and managers, are you ready to take your workplace strategy to the next level? At 2Js, we get it. Managing people, driving engagement, and keeping up with ever-changing HR challenges isn't easy. But what if you had instant access to expert-led training, ready-to-use HR toolkits, and practical resources, all designed to make your job easier? From leadership development to conflict resolution, employee engagement to resilience training, we've got the solutions you need when you need them. And here's something just for you. Use discount code podcast25 at the checkout for 25% off all purchases at 2J's HR store. No more wasting time on outdated processes. Visit 2jshrstore.com today and claim your exclusive discount. Because great HR isn't just about policies, it's about people. So from your experience of kind of doing things like funnels and automizations and email campaigns, etc., is there a go-to tool that you would recommend or you guys actually use?
There's a few. So this is the other thing. So I actually created a resource recently talking about the different AI models. So these LLMs and what they are each capable of, because the more you play around with these tools, the more you realize that some of them are better suited to certain tasks. So for instance, if I was writing copy for a funnel, I would actually go to Anthropic and use Claude, because their output is far more tailored to that. It's not full of emojis like you may get with ChatGPT and things like that. Their copy is much better. Whereas if I was writing a research paper, I would go to Perplexity, because it's that model works much better for research. So I think there's lots of different tools that we're using. Obviously ChatGPT, we're using Claude, Perplexity, we use Fathom. So you mentioned before about meeting recordings. the day I discovered Fathom was like the heavens had opened, and I was so thrilled because I didn't have to sit in client meetings trying to take notes at the same time as engaging with the client. And then, you have to type the notes up and send them the summary. It's all handled for me, which is just amazing. But yeah, so there's lots of different tools out there for different use cases, and so we're still exploring. So as an agency, clients will come and say, "Oh, can we do this?" Or is there a way of doing that? And often we go on a path of, okay, well, let's see what's out there. Let's see what we can leverage. We are definitely more no code or low code platforms. We're not here sitting developing these platforms and coding in Python and all of that kind of stuff. We're leveraging what's already been created because that makes more sense. Like, why wouldn't we? So yeah, we're often, automation is a big one. So Zapier, where we're connecting platforms together that wouldn't normally talk to each other. We've got Zapier, we've got Make, we've got N8N. So yeah, there's lots of them.
But so again, just kind of for the uninitiated, the automation, what does that actually mean for the uninitiated?
So automation is always, well, I say always, over the last decade or more, it's been a thing where if a platform can't talk to another platform, but you want to bridge that gap, there are automation tools like Zapier. I use Zapier because that's probably one of the oldest kind of well-known and established ones in the marketplace, where what these tools do is via webhooks or APIs, they're sending data. So actually, I saw somebody describe it in this way, and I thought it made sense, and it's quite cool. So if you were in a restaurant and a waiter comes to take your order, the waiter then takes that order to the kitchen. Imagine this is your API. So the waiter takes the order to the kitchen, and then the kitchen prepares the order, sends it back with the waiter to your table. That's exactly what an API is. It's just the passing of data backwards and forwards between platforms. So these automation tools, obviously, over time have become more advanced, and more platforms have opened up their APIs so that they can be part of these bridging tools like Zapier. So if you go onto Zapier, I think they have integrations with something like 2,000 platforms now. So I could say, when somebody pays me for a service, I want to kick off an onboarding workflow. So they might pay me in Stripe, but maybe I'm doing my onboarding from my project management tool. Let's say it was ClickUp. So I don't want to have to sit there waiting to see when that order comes in, and then, sending out the emails or the onboarding forms or whatever it is I need to do. I can just use a tool like Zapier or Make and say, okay, listen for that indication from Stripe that payment has been made. And when that trigger happens, I want you to do the following actions. And that might be, set up a file or folder in ClickUp, add in my project statuses, send out the welcome email, and that might not be from ClickUp, but that could be from Gmail, or that could be from an email platform like MailerLite or ActiveCampaign, and then do whatever else is part of my onboarding process. And that just all happens, and I just sit there looking at the magic taking place. So that's what automation is, and it's developing and evolving over time, and more platforms are making it easy for us to be able to say, it doesn't all have to be manual work. Just program it once. We're not quite at the stage of set it and forget it, because sometimes servers go down or things may happen, and so in that very moment that a payment has come through, server isn't working, so it's missed it, and you might have to manually go in and redo that trigger so that the workflow happens. So we can't quite say it's completely hands off, but it's significantly more hands off than what it was like 10 years ago, when we didn't have these options and we were having to say, okay, someone's paid me, let me go in now and do these 20 different tasks that I need to give them a good onboarding experience so that they want to work with me and they don't have buyer's remorse. So yeah.
And I think that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I guess the challenge now for people is to actually think about what's actually involved in each of those steps, to plan that out, to then tell the AI to do that automatically for them. And I think you're right. I think so many more different platforms that I'm aware of are starting to integrate AI. I know a couple of years ago you introduced me to the concept of Loom as a fantastic screen recording, and also Canva as well. And both of those I know have now got fully upgraded AI integrations,
They do.
which make
Yes.
them even easier to actually utilize. But seeing, for example, ChatGPT, instructing it to do something and then seeing it say, do you want me to prepare a Canva template for you to utilize straight away? The integration amongst the machines and machine learning there is progressing so quickly. And I guess that's where a lot of the fear may come from for people, that if they don't keep abreast of this, they're going to get lost in the ways of utilizing this, the language, and how they actually kind of get comfortable with this technology in their everyday life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think people, in my experience, are kind of in one of three camps. They're either, yes, AI, love it, want to make my whole life as automated as possible, please, I'm all for it. Then you've got people who are probably more like me, where it's like, okay, I have some trepidation with AI and where it's going, and all of the potential is quite scary, because at the end of the day, we still live on planet Earth, and humans aren't always operating with the best of intention. So I'm kind of like I'm a bit skeptical camp, but I very much see the benefits of it. And then you've got the people who are just anti AI, feel like it's, the devil's spawn, and, they're kind of very much like, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to see anything about it, I'm sick of AI already. And I do often worry for the people in that last camp, because the reality is AI is not going anywhere. And part of me would love to see the government, and I won't go off too much on a tangent about this, but I would love to see governments around the world saying, hang on a second, this is developing very, very quickly, and maybe we need to press the brakes a little bit and just kind of slow it down. But I fear that will never happen, because everyone's kind of in a race and they want to be the first for everything. So it's here to stay. We have to learn to live with it at the very least, embrace it if we can. And, definitely with our business hats on, it makes sense to leverage AI, and that's just a fact.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think I've always been a supporter of adaptability. So we've been around for 22 years now. And the reason we've been around for that long is that we have adapted, we've evolved with what's going on around us and situations. And I think AI is the next iteration of that, really. And you're absolutely right. Those organizations, those individuals that don't embrace change, and we all know that change is uncomfortable for a lot of people, they'll, like the dinosaur analogy, they'll get left behind. And unfortunately, if they're not doing, in this context, AI, then their competitors will be, and the competitors will be more efficient, more cost effective to their customers, and that will ultimately lose them business. So I think you're right. I think it's how do you get people to start embracing and stepping outside of their fear zones and start kind of getting comfortable with the world ahead of us. I think if we were, and we sometimes do this, we do radar reviews. If you were kind of to look ahead, I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball now. If you had to look ahead for like the next 12 months, or even after that, the next 5 years, well, where do you see kind of AI evolving for leaders, managers, businesses?
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating question. And I also feel like it's one that, because I've heard the extremes of, someone was saying, was it yesterday or the day before actually? Someone was saying that they'd seen a statistic about, I think like over 50 or 60% of people would be in a relationship with AI by 2040 or something along those lines. Obviously, don't quote me because I don't know the exact the exact statistic, but I feel like we've all kind of got a sense of where it may go. For me, over the next 12 months, I definitely think we see more smaller businesses accepting that they need to embrace AI, and seeing how they can adopt it into what they're doing in terms of systems and processes. My piece of advice for them would be start with the things that people hate the most, and that's how you get the buy-in. When someone says, oh, that doing the accounts or something, I can't stand doing it. Oh, now there's AI that can help me with that. Well, this is amazing. So start with the things that people hate the most. I think that's how you get the best buy-in. I think for the bigger companies who are ultimately driving AI forward for us, I think the pace continues. It will speed up. We will see even more AI technology available to us. Everything from the glasses that people have been talking about. Put the glasses on, you can control everything. You can talk to the glasses and say, book me a restaurant tonight, and it will do all of that for you. I think maybe not in 12 months, but we will be seeing that within the next few years, that there will be technology like that is fully functional. I mean, we're already seeing like driverless cars and things like that. Sometimes these things do malfunction, so I think a lot of it is about really smoothing out how this technology works as well. But next 5 years, if we're thinking bigger picture, I would say to all businesses, small or large, you need to be planning for what is coming, because as you quite rightly said a few minutes ago, if you don't, you will be left behind. And I think that is a fact. I do think we're going to see a big shift in terms of businesses that are still standing in the next 5 years. And I think a lot of those businesses are going to be the businesses that are either in the technology space, so they're driving things forward, or they've embraced technology the best that they can, and they're upskilling their workforce to make sure that they're in a position to, help drive their companies forward. So yeah.
I think that's a great insight, and particularly picking up on the 5-year aspects. I guess what concerns me a little bit about some of the organizations that we engage with and work with is the lack of AI integration into their strategies, their 5-year plans, as it were. And for me, it goes back to your point earlier on about the digital skills of their workforce. I think there is an acceptance or an anticipation from some organizations that education will cover that digital ability. And certainly with Gen Zs and kind of next generation coming through, maybe they are more au fait than existing workforce. And I know certainly my generation, Gen X, okay, it's been a steep learning curve for some of the things that we have to deal with now. But I think organizations, SMEs, medium-sized businesses, large organizations, have almost a responsibility to the workforce to educate them, to help them understand what the workplace is going to look like in 5 years' time, what that means for them in terms of the new skills that they're going to need to have and implement to get the maximum out of the tech that is going to be available to them. If they don't start planning for that now, then as we've both mentioned, that they run the risk of actually being left behind. I think a lot of organizations are still thinking short-term profitability and kind of meeting customer demands right now, but they have to surely have it on their radar pretty soon, if not being already too late, if they haven't got it in place already.
I 100% agree, and I'm very passionate about this because, we, as I mentioned earlier, have a digital skills gap here in the UK, and it's something like 21 million working adults do not have the digital skills, so the essential digital skills that have been identified by Lloyd's Banking Group and fully supported by the government, these 20 skills that they have come up with. When you think about that, and then you think about AI and automation and new technologies coming through, we already have a workforce that isn't equipped with just what we have today. And so you add that extra layer on of how fast things are moving and the new things that people will have to learn. Yes, as much as, we've got the younger generation coming through who are, they're well versed in technology because they were born with iPhones in their hands, kind of thing. we can't solely rely on that, because they are also a generation who are very open to moving on very quickly, and they want to explore lots of different things and do lots of different things. And I'm not saying that's an issue, but that is just how that generation is. And so if I'm a small business owner thinking, oh, it's okay, like maybe I'm looking at my workforce now and they already struggle with digital skills, but I'm not going to worry about it, because we'll just hire in these young guys who are going to come and revolutionize everything. And then you do that and they're gone within a year. It's a big problem, so what do you do? And so you are absolutely correct. And as I say, I'm very passionate about this, that we have to be training people to be fully functioning members of the workforce with the digital skills that they need. And even though like the curriculum is starting to change and computer science is now a thing that the next generations have to do, we are still in a space where the curriculum is very much theoretical and not, but this is the practical application. And so them teaching kids how to code in platforms like Scratch, which is what my son's 9, so he's still quite young, but that's what he's been learning how to do. Well, that's all well and good, that's lovely, but how do we apply this when we get into the workforce? How does that translate into what companies actually need? And I think there's just a bit too much of a divide there. So yeah.
Yeah, and as we've already talked about, it's a huge kind of problem and a huge topic, and some fantastic nuggets and kind of insights there. But if I was to put you on the spot to conclude this episode, if there was one thing that you would recommend managers, leaders, SMEs, businesses of all sizes to do with regard to AI that they weren't currently doing, what would that be? There's a question for you.
There is a question for me. I would say, don't get caught up in the hype. So we are seeing tools being created and, people are selling you all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And AI can obviously do so much. However, again, with our business hats on, the first question we should be asking ourselves is, how does this generate money? How does it save on costs? Or how does it give me back time? So if that was the only piece of advice I could give anyone, it would be really think about it with intention, and that will stand you in good stead.
That's fantastic. Great insight there, Toni. Thank you very much for your time today. It's been really, really interesting. As you probably guess, this is a subject that I'm so passionate about myself, and it's great to find a fellow consultant that enjoys the topic as much as me. If people want to find out more, like I say, they can contact you directly. We'll put your business links into the episode, and hopefully they'll take lots of information from this particular episode. But for the time being, Toni, thank you very much. Hope to see you on future episodes, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been very enjoyable. Thank you.